Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Pattern, Life and Leadership Unlocked. I'm your host, Bukola Oguntala, and today's guest is someone whose work is groundbreaking and necessary. I'm honored to welcome Grace Young Foster, founder and CEO of the Inclusion Initiative. It's a tech platform that's changing the future of work for adoptees and foster care alumni. So there are an estimated 15 million adoptees and foster alumni in the U.S., many of whom face huge barriers to economic equity and career opportunity, especially those who age out of care without a traditional support system. Grace has not only identified that gap, she's built a bridge. She's served hundreds of adoptees and fosters as they build careers and professional networks. And she created the first of its kind, an annual leadership summit for adoptees, fosters, and allies in the workforce. Now, she also launched a national professional network specifically for this community. And before launching this initiative, Grace had a strong career as a nonprofit leader. She earned an MBA from NYU and her BA in communications from the University of Minnesota. So, Grace, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, such an honor, such an honor. So I hope I didn't miss anything from the bio. Is there anything you want to add or anything I missed?
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
okay, cool. Now, for those that tune in and listen to the podcast, if they want to get a hold of you or support your work, is there what's the best way for people to reach you?
I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. That's how you and I connected.
Yeah.
So it's / Grace Young Foster. Find me there. Connect with me. I would love to meet you and just see how we can support one another. If you are listening to this and you're interested, especially as an adoptee or foster yourself, and then our company website. So it's theinclusioninitiative.com, and you can reach us there too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now, before we jump in, I just want to say, Grace, your work, it really tugs at my heart personally because I wasn't formally adopted, but I experienced what sometimes is referred to as non-formal or informal placement growing up.
Mhm.
So there was a period of instability that led me to live with others. I had to ask over and over again for a place to stay, figure out what safety looked like, and rebuild from there. So while our journeys are different, I deeply understand what it means to navigate life without a built-in safety net. So, all my family is Nigerian, I'm first generation American. And so, when things like this happen, death or loss, and, you just have to come up with options. That was my reality. And so, but I was always worried about someone finding me and putting me in the foster care system or something like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, so while it's not exactly the same, I can just relate on a lot of levels. So yeah, I just want to thank you for being willing to share your voice and platform and for giving space to stories that aren't always heard.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that you went through that. That's a lot. It's a lot. Even if it's people you know who you're being placed with multiple times over and over, it's a lot of just it's a traumatic experience, but it builds with each placement. And I don't think people quite understand the layers and how it builds. And so I really appreciate you sharing that because it is hard to share that. And it's hard to share it with people that may not understand it because they haven't lived it, right? And so having you elevate this conversation on this podcast and what leadership from this perspective looks like, I really appreciate that. So thank you again for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And, on the podcast, we talk a lot about patterns. Patterns is really how I learned to navigate a system that my parents didn't know, they weren't born into. And so even if they were alive and still in the picture, there's a lot I had to figure out. And so patterns are really how I learned to course correct. I could pick up on oh, what led to that? Breakdown, X, Y, and Z. Oh, okay, I need to try this next time. And so over time, that kind of way of continuously learning, continuously getting better, it really helped me in HR become more self-aware. And it helped
Yeah.
me help leaders become more self-aware because I'm able to connect those dots pretty easily. So yeah, so let's start by taking it back. On the podcast, like I said, we talk about patterns. early patterns that shaped us as leaders. And for you, when you think about your early years, your upbringing, your childhood, or even young adulthood, what were some of the biggest influences that shaped the leader that you are today? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting and like very layered dynamic question as well. Because as you experienced yourself, when, I was going through multiple home placements, which literally meant multiple rejections by people who were supposed to care about me, that were supposed to keep me safe, that were supposed to provide for me, that were, supposed to help me have like this future. When that gets broken over and over again, it really has a tremendous impact on a person that where you develop patterns as we're talking about
Mhm.
to you understand a few things, right? You learn behaviors that develop into patterns in your life that you carry into your adult life, and some of the patterns for a time are tremendously helpful even if they're negative, not great patterns to have developed, and others can be incredibly harmful. And I think for me as an adoptee that experienced broken adoptions, and that's why I went into the foster care system, I was also relinquished by my birth family. I don't know how or why, but having that separation and then being a American into the US, being placed into multiple families here, that just for me, it impacted my behavior in terms of internalizing, right, this rejection. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? What did I do? What did I do wrong? And I think, that it can be a challenge to overcome that kind of mindset,
Yeah.
especially when you grow into leadership in an organization. And the other pattern too, right, is putting up walls, barriers, putting on masks, constantly code switching and not realizing you're doing it. It's just becomes a part of who you are and how you react to the world. And so those things too played into how I developed into a leader, but then also how I had to unlearn some of those behaviors to become an even better leader, but also a great teammate as well, which is equally as important. So,
No, thank you for sharing that. I can totally relate to how certain coping skills, they definitely helped me. And early on, even sports, a lot of my coaches in New Jersey, it's like performance became such a big priority. And that works
yeah,
in some contexts, but
yep,
anything to the extreme in life you have to watch. And so once I saw that you need that flexibility to kind and discernment to pull back and say this is this is not the time to use that coping approach. Yeah, no, that's a critical piece, and that internalizing, that's also, yeah, definitely real. I think when I was younger, I would hear mindset said so much,
yeah,
mostly in like a sports context. And as I've gotten older, I have a new appreciation for mindset because I mean, you really have to protect your mind. You
yeah.
really do. Because there's so many even dynamics today where it's like, you just have to protect your mind for sure. Yeah. And I appreciate you going. I realized I didn't give the audience much about your background and why you're drawn to this work. So I'm
No
glad
worries.
you, I'm glad you touched on that. Is there anything else you want to share about why you were drawn to this work? You mentioned you were an adoptee. Is there anything more you want to share about why? Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, to your previous comment, right? We start to learn when things aren't serving us well anymore. We start seeing some of those patterns in our reactions, in our how we internalize things that I think become super prominent in the workplace, right? Because in your personal life, you can kind of be selective, right? Sometimes you cut off relationships or you just don't do the thing or
Mhm.
you can choose what pathway you're going to go moving forward. But when you're in the workplace, especially in big corporate settings, but even in like small business settings, you have a boss. and it's going to be dictated for you, right? Like what you are doing, it's defined by your role, what your achievements are, how success is going to be defined for you, and you're held to standards, which you should be. But, for me, as someone that was a foster kid, someone that had multiple broken adoptions, and was relinquished by the family that I never got to know, for me, it started becoming very evident what that life experience, like how it was coming out in the workplace for me. And not that it was coming out in a negative way for my employer. In fact, it was the opposite, right? You talked about like putting every best foot forward, the grind, the hustle, showing that you're extremely capable because you had to prove yourself. Same. Well, I had to prove myself. And then there was the added layer, which you may have experienced too, but for me, it was the added layer of like, gosh, I really have to prove myself because I can't lose this. Like I can't get rejected again. I can't lose this. And for me, right, not having that traditional support structure, you know, we were both on our own as young adults, so we just had to figure it out. So obviously, like not having a job was also a big deal. Like you can't lose this. But it also was for me at that time as a young professional, it was all I had. Like my job was me.
Yeah.
my
Okay. Your
job
identity.
my job, yeah, it became my identity, but it also was the only thing that I actually had, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
that could be permanent or
Yeah.
like stable. So it was a big deal for me to hold on to all of that. And so I overperformed, I overworked, I did all the things. And I was realizing, right, that internalized behavior or the internalized messaging of like, well, you're relinquished because you weren't good enough, or you didn't do enough, or you weren't enough of something, whatever it is, right? Like, so if I could like fix all of that and be whoever they wanted me to be, I could stay. It made me a terrific employee. Like I was stellar. Always on the top of the teams, one of the, really great performers, all the good, I got all that good feedback, and it became something that just drove me and I wanted it more and more and more. And so it fueled that behavior more and more and more. But at some point, right, as I was stepping into leadership roles, I started realizing, oh my gosh, this is not serving me anymore. I'm setting a horrible example for my team. If I can't have boundaries or shut it off, or have like the protective mechanisms where I want to I can stay in this job long term, like not burn out basically.
Yeah.
Like if I can't show them that, like that's a problem,
Yeah.
because if I want to retain my team, I need to start being that example for them.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it started becoming evident, right, in the workplace that this was a challenge that I had to address and start looking at how I showed up for work differently. And I started realizing, like, okay, like we have all these affinity groups, right? There's affinity groups for X, Y, and Z, but I don't quite fit in this affinity group. Like you, first gen American, but I'm Korean, and I was especially young in my career. And even as I was in leadership, right, I was in a lot of white led spaces. And I grew up in really white communities. So being Asian for me was always something I was ashamed about. So I never wanted to associate myself with being Asian. I tried to actually move as far away from that as possible. You can relate to this, right? You can't
Yeah.
erase, like, this is
Oh, oh
it's not
yeah.
going
Oh
away.
yeah. Oh yeah. Not to mention my
Like
name. Like,
oh
yeah.
yeah, and for you, your name, absolutely. Mine would, like, I could fool people on paper. And then
You
they'd
couldn't
see
fool
me.
people, Grace.
No, and then when they would see me, they're like, "You're
Oh,
Grace?"
right.
Like, yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No.
so like I did what I could to kind of push myself away from my Asian identity and my Asian community. And, I struggled with that for decades, but I didn't realize it
Right,
until,
right.
I started doing this reflective work as a leader, realizing like I need to change my behaviors. Well, to change my behaviors, I have to go back all the way to this issue, and I need help. I need support. I need mentors. I need to be coached. Like I need this now. Now that I'm leading people, like I need this now. Where is it for? Hello, where is it for people like me?
Well,
Well,
and
guess
the
what? Yeah, well, there
yeah.
wasn't there wasn't affinity groups for adoptees. There weren't affinity groups for fosters. There were affinity groups for Asian Americans, but I am Asian American, but not in a traditional recognized way. But across the US, like you just read that number, like there's 15 million of us estimated. Like we're not
Yeah,
even all counted
right.
because kind of like you, there are people that were under the radar, like not supported, not resourced at all by the system. And so they're not even counted in these numbers. So it's an estimated 15 million. I feel like there's probably significantly more. But then when you add in the allies, so like parents that foster, parents that adopt, people in the community that have siblings that are adopted, or, et cetera, you like that's exponential growth.
Oh
So
yeah.
there are
Yeah.
probably tens of millions, if not 100 million people that have some kind of personal connection or experience with adoption and foster care. And, when you think about it that way, that's a lot of people that don't have a resource in the workplace
Oh
where
yeah.
we're resourcing a lot of other people, right, with that identify as other things. Well, this is a life identity too. And so, I after searching for a couple of years and I'm like, there's got to be a nonprofit that does this. There's got
Yeah.
to be some kind of like structure for people that are in the workforce and in leadership. No,
Yeah.
I couldn't find that very specific resource, and it's like, of course, you can piecemeal all these things, but that's not helpful. You need it in your work environment where they speak your language and you speak theirs, and you're already in community with people. Like that's, being mentored there, being seen there, being resourced there is really important. To answer your question, that's why the Inclusion Initiative was born, because I'm like, okay, if someone that has my accomplishments, my experiences, my resources, my privilege, like I'm a very privileged person. And if I need this kind of help, what are other people doing? Like, I can't find it. I'm good at
Yeah.
finding things and I can't find it. What are other people doing? I'm like, well, obviously they're struggling too. And they're not going to find it unless someone builds it. And at first I'm like, well, I'm not going to build it. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to build it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so here we are.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, no, I love the evolution, and it makes total sense. This is a number of people that, it's a growing number. It's not like going down or anything year after year. It continues to go up. A lot of times, I know for me personally, I don't know that I always waved the flag and said, "Hey, this is who I am," and share that with people. So obviously, when I even started leading people, you have to find a way to build connection. And people want to get to know you and they want to know your background. And I just remember since I was little, you share your background and people would just like look at you like, what? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't know what to
what?
say. Yeah.
Like they didn't know what to do with it. And so
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I made that mean like I need to help them and not even expose them to my background. And so I didn't go into it.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of like what you said on the corporate side, you're trying to get to know your team's trying to get to know you. It makes a difference in building partnerships, alliances, and yeah, even community.
Well, and I will say it's very important, especially for people that are aspiring, right, to grow their careers at that workplace or, you know, develop certain skill sets or whatever it is. Like it's super important to have those relationships at work. And it's very challenging when you have a story like yours or mine, right? It's challenging to expose that story, especially, if you're not sure how it'll be received or if it'll even be understood. And then
Right.
you don't want to be the person that, oh, they have a weird story.
Right.
don't
Right.
don't talk
Right.
to them.
Right, right. But if you
Right?
don't
Like
say
it's a
any,
weird
but if you don't
story.
address it, it
Right.
becomes weird too, you know?
Right, but right, exactly, because it's like, oh yeah, no, I don't actually have parents, so but let's not talk about that.
Right, right.
It's
Or
like
nobody
it's just
knows anything about her. Nobody knows
awkward
anything.
things. Exactly. But back to my point is, you need to build those relationships so that you can be sponsored in the workplace, so you can be coached, mentored in the workplace, that someone will see themselves in you or want to support you and like elevate you. But you can't do that without the relationships, and you can't
Right,
do that without the connection, like some kind of
right.
connection point. And then how do you navigate that when you've never done it before, when you've never shared that piece of yourself?
That's
Like,
a
and you
different
shouldn't,
level of vulnerability for sure.
yes, and but also you shouldn't have to, right? You shouldn't have to share things that you're not ready to share. It's no one's business. But yet the juxtaposition is that's how you build relationships. So it's very challenging. It's a lose-lose for the
Yeah,
person with your background or my background. Having someone that has this lived experience where you're able to find them without having to ask the awkward questions, right? Like, oh, I'm adopted or I was in foster care. Were you? Like, you
right.
don't want to walk around the workplace asking that, right?
Yeah,
But if there's an affinity group for people with that you don't have to ask, you don't have to have those awkward questions. And then guess what, people in that affinity group, they want to support you. They already understand where you're coming from, like they already understand the entire background of unsaid things, that all you have to say is like, yeah, I went through foster care, and immediately people get it. It's just that level of unspoken understanding that you only get with people that really have lived your life experience, pieces of it, right? That you can find commonality, where you don't have to have those awkward conversations where you don't have to share what you don't want to share, right?
yeah,
And yet you can still build bridges, you can still build community, and then find your support system in the workplace, find your mentors, find your sponsors, and then be able to build your career with those support systems and those people behind you. If you know anyone that's been adopted, especially, people are like, oh, that's wonderful. That's so great. You got your family happy ending. Yay for you and your family. And it's like, well, actually, and then they decided not to keep me. And then I was put in
yeah,
foster care. It's like blah, 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 blah. And it's like, this narrative of the happy ending, of the kid being rescued and saved, of the adoptee, right, never struggling in their life ever again. Like, that's not true. Even if it's a super great adoption, like in a moment in time, yes, we're not struggling. But let me tell you, of the hundreds of adoptees and fosters I've talked to, as you go through life stages, well, guess what? We struggle the same way everyone else struggles,
yeah. Because new things come
right?
up, right? New
New
things.
things. We grow up. We have, adult experiences and challenges, like work, like building our careers, right? And we need support structures throughout our entire journey, not just at the adoption or foster care stage. And that's what's really hard for this community, is that everyone thinks about supporting the kid, but nobody thinks about supporting the adult. And so that's why, the inclusion initiative is really needed, because we support the adult person, the whole person, right, that
Mhm.
has the experience of foster care or has the experience of adoption, but they need these adult communities and supports and mentors and all of that in this phase of their life.
Yeah, no, well said. Let's see, we actually touched on quite a few questions just in just in those
I'm a
first few.
talker. I'm a talker. You have to cut me off. Sorry.
No, no, no. I love it. I love it. So let's see. So I guess my next question is, what do most companies or leaders get wrong when it comes to supporting adoptees or foster care alumni? Like, what don't they understand that they need to?
They just don't understand that they need to.
Okay.
Again, yeah, there's just no
It's
there's
not
no
even on the
support.
radar. It's not
It's
on the
not
radar.
even on the radar. What I see all the time, what I've seen in the workplaces that I've been in, we provide support for people that want to adopt or people that are going to foster kids. We provide that employee benefit, right? So we'll give you a certain stipend or whatever, as an employee of this company. so that you can go adopt your child, or you can go foster and, do that work that you want to do. Okay, there are benefits for birth parents, right? But what about parents that are adoptees or fosters themselves? Like, we need like mental health support right through this journey, because parenting, when you've been relinquished and when you've had this experience of being adopted or fostered, like, parenting is a completely different experience for us. And so we need a different kind of support, right? And so, like, just things like that. It's always, I see a lot of things that are centered for people that do the adopting or do the fostering, or, similar kind of thing. But we don't think about our workforce that actually were the foster kids and were the adoptees, and how, we really could benefit from being seen and heard in the workplace through the benefits that are provided.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I know at many of the companies I've worked at in the past, they've always offered an employee assistance program, an EAP, which allowed you to call a number and they paired you up with counselors. It could be financial counselors, mental health counselors, and so. But I think a lot of the bigger corporations have that available. Depending on the company and the size you're with, they might not have that benefit. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think I've taken that for granted.
I think that's, to answer your question, that's just something companies can do. Easy, simple step is just acknowledge and realize, oh yeah, this community of people exists in our workforce. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting. So
yeah.
how do we support them?
As you've moved on and year to year leading your organization, what surprised you about your style as a leader? What you've had to unlearn? What you've had to shift along the way to be more effective? Yeah, anything that what surprises you? Mhm.
One of the things that surprised me the most was how big of a gap there was in this space.
Hmm.
It makes sense because we hadn't existed before. And then all of a sudden we existed, and I started getting an influx of like, oh my gosh, I wanted this, I needed this, like, it's so great that you're here. So that was a really pleasant surprise, right? Filling a gap that is there, like, it's a real gap. So I'm honored to do that. We need more of us. Like, I hope I'm not the only one that's going to do this work moving forward. It takes an entire village, right? And another thing that surprised me, I think, was how much, like, leaning into my authenticity has really helped me develop even more as a leader, especially as a face of the inclusion initiative. I have never, ever, ever, ever been able to bring my whole self to work and feel safe, right? And you don't have to bring your whole self to work to be a great employee, but if you want to, it's something that you should have the opportunity to do and know that you'll still be a great employee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you should have the option. Like, if you want to bring your whole self, your background, everything, and like have your colleagues know that about you, you should be able to, and feel safe and feel seen and heard and valued and still a team member. But I've had to hide those bits, right? Because, exactly to your point, right? The stigma, just the unknown of it. Like, people
Yeah.
just don't
Yeah.
understand. They don't
Other.
understand. Yeah. And so it's the first place where I'm just like, this is literally me, all of me. So I can be a badass CEO, a badass founder, badass leader, driver, dreamer, like, visionary, all the things. And guess what? I'm also an adoptee and foster, and I struggle with these things, and I have these challenges and these barriers that I need community for, that I'm trying to get support for. And guess what? It doesn't minimize me. Like, it actually makes me even more powerful, that I can lean into all of that, and it's combined into this, this role, because I can be completely authentically myself, and my company does well because I can be completely authentically myself. So it's that has been the biggest unexpected thing, because I've always bought in to what a lot of us buy into, right? Like, if you're going to be powerful CEO, C-suite executive, like, you got to be like cool, cool as a cucumber, have a certain aura. You can't share too much about yourself. You can't be
That's
this or be
shifting. I
that.
feel like it's shifting. For
It's
sure. It's shifting.
shifting, right? And it's like, people like you and I doing stuff like this and like building things that we're building and having these conversations. It is shifting, right? But especially when, I was trying to rise into leadership, 10 years ago, like
Mhm.
it was still a thing. Like you couldn't be a certain way if you wanted to be taken seriously as a leader. For me, I'm going to speak for myself, but I have heard a lot of people tell me they have this experience too, right? But for me, as a woman of color, especially, yeah, you better have a very specific persona and your guard up, and you got to be one of the boys or whatever it is if you're going to make it to that C-suite level. But here I am, like, just get that table out of here. I don't want to sit at that table anymore. I'm building my own house.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
inspiring others to do the same just by showing them, look, this is what a CEO can look like. This is what a founder looks like. This is what my background is. I'm very loud about it because even if you're not an adoptee or a foster, but if you're an Asian woman or just a person that has had some kind of life experience where you're made to feel like you don't belong and you can't be that because of your background, no. Like we're showing them this is possible. Here we are. And so like that's been like one of the best gifts of this building this company, but also again one of the biggest surprises, right, of being this leader in building the inclusion initiative.
And the inclusion initiative, are all cultures represented, or are you focusing in on just the Asian community? I just wanted to get clarity.
No,
Oh, okay. Okay.
no, mm-mm. It's anyone that has that lived experience or anyone that considers themselves an ally. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
yes, we have people of all ethnicities, backgrounds, races, people who identify, in all sorts of ways that are part of
Yeah.
the community.
Okay. And what advice would you give to someone who's navigating career or life as an adoptee or foster alum, especially someone who doesn't have a built-in safety net? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, it's something I wish I would have done a long time ago. I wish I didn't wait till I was in my 30s to start seeking this kind of community. So first off, seek community. If it's not at work, seek it externally. Obviously, if you're an adoptee or foster, the Inclusion Initiative, we're here for you too. But there's so many others out there that do bits and pieces of what we do, but they all build community. So if you're not looking for specific workplace career driven community, there's other adoptee and foster groups that build community and just talk about this lived experience and support one another. So that's one. But then the other, I say this a lot because this is a huge challenge, and we talked about this earlier, sharing your lived experience, like your story. I it's really important that people hear this from me who have the adoptee or foster experience. Hearing your story is a privilege, period. A privilege that you get to decide when, where, how, why they hear it, not the other way around. We are always asked a lot of presumptuous questions from people when they learn, right, that we're an adoptee or we've been in foster care. I'm not saying it's a negative presumption, but it is something that makes us feel, right, that we have to share a lot of the bits and pieces that we might be uncomfortable sharing, or we're not ready, right, to reveal certain things about ourselves. And so if you choose to share that you're an adoptee or foster, but then that's all you want to share, just stop. Don't share more. Like, you are in control of your story. You have power over your story, not the other way around. Don't let others dictate how you're seen and heard in the world. That is up to you. So just know that you have permission to share as much or as little as you want, and don't let others drive that for you. Like, you are in control of that, and you give yourself permission to do as much or as little of that as you want. And that's really important for me to say, because our whole lives we're really pressured by society's expectations to all of a sudden like blah, our entire story, when we're like, we actually don't want to share that because we just don't, and it's a personal choice. And some people do want to elaborate on their entire life story, and that's their choice, right? But if you don't want to, that don't let others pressure you into that.
No, I I agree. I agree. And a lot of times people don't even know what they're asking. So
Hmm.
when they get
Yep,
this, like, whoa, whoa, they weren't even equipped to handle the full story. So
exactly.
sometimes, yeah. Now, we don't often get to hear directly from people who were adopted. So I'm curious, what advice would you give to someone who's considering adoption? What do you wish they understood? Is there anything there that you want to speak to?
Well, I actually had two broken adoptions. So I was adopted, but then unadopted. So that is something that I want adopters to really understand is a reality. It happens. And I want them to understand that it's because there's a lot of just under education about what it means to adopt a child. There is so much to discuss that we don't have time for. There's an array of how people adopt and why they adopt. And for me, like my place is not to say, yes, our country should continue adoptions or our country should stop adoptions. I don't know. That's not my place. It's an individual choice for everybody. But I want adopters to understand that this is a lifelong impact for the child that you're adopting. And I'll say this even further. I went through IVF to conceive my second child. Lots and lots of embryo adoptions and like sperm donations happen in the IVF world. And people, I think, it's easy to forget that you did adopt that child. Either you adopted the embryo or you used donated sperm, which is, you're still, it's a piece of that person that is not related to you, right? Like you had to take on like an adoption of someone else's kid. And you have to remember that this will impact the kid forever. Like that is who they are forever. And really think deep and thoughtfully about if you're going to take on adopting a person, first recognizing that they are their own person, right? They're not an extension of you in terms of what their life is allowed to be, like what their story is allowed to be. Like that is their story. They're adopted. And you shouldn't hide that from them. And you should also like embrace, right, that part of their journey and their life. And that even if you are the best parent in the world, we all try to be, your child has every right to question why they were adopted or how they feel about their adoption or how they navigate their adoption. Like that is their life, their journey. Like you don't own their life. That is their life. Just like if you were to birth from your body a child, it's still their life. You don't own that child. And so it gets challenging in that sense because, the parents have the best intentions, right? And a lot of them, I hear a lot of stories of, parents really glossing over the adoption or not talking about it or not really allowing that to be a part of that child's understanding of who they are. But that's not right. Like they have every right to know their full story, their complete story, and then navigate it how they want to navigate it, how it's best for them to navigate it, because they're their own person. And so there's a lot of undereducation about that particular thing that I hope that adopters will like just really think about before they adopt a child. Like, am I prepared to give this child their complete story and their journey in the ways that they need? Not in the ways that I need as a parent, but in the ways that they need as the adopted child forever.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it gets bumpy. It gets bumpy. And it might not be until they're 30, but it does get bumpy. It's just such a unique life experience to be an adopted person.
Thank you. What's next for you, Grace? Anything coming up you're excited about or anything you want folks to know about? or support Yeah.
Well, we have our annual leadership summit. So we had our inaugural one in Minnesota, in Minneapolis in November of 2025. So we're about to have, our 2026, our second one. And so it's just, the growth of this community is only made possible because of people who are allies to us. They hear our voice, they see us, they want to help us create even more visibility and more resources and support. And so this leadership summit is a big piece of that, right? Shedding light on the workplace experience for adoptees and fosters and having our allies come to that and being a part of that to learn, but also support. It's a big undertaking. It's a big project for us. And I'm excited to share our second event with the world. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, please visit our website. And you can learn all you need to on our website. So
Nice. And it's probably good to touch on that one more time, how to connect with you. Can you give the website again and best way to reach you?
Yeah, it's theinclusioninitiative.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. You can find us on all the platforms as well, The Inclusion Initiative.
Well, Grace, before we close, we normally do like a quick segment on just patterns. It's called Pattern Check, and it's where we ask our guests to choose between two words and just what resonates. There's no right or wrong or anything like that. So I thought it might be fun to just go ahead and do that next. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. So let's see. The first set of words is structure or flexibility. Which one resonates for you and why?
Both.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've learned that for me to be a good leader, I need both.
Agree. What about legacy or impact?
Legacy, because your legacy is a part of your impact.
Mm.
For me personally, and for like community members that I have, like legacy for us is a loaded word, right? Because we don't have family legacy.
Right.
We don't have like that built-in legacy, right? We're creating our own. So from scratch.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Inner voice or outer validation?
Inner voice.
Silence or strategy?
Strategy.
And do it yourself or ask for help?
No, ask for help. My answers used to be complete opposite.
Yeah, same here. That's the evolution, the growth. So
yes,
anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah. So love that. Thank you for playing along. Now, before we officially close, Grace, thank you again for this conversation and for being such a powerful example of what it looks like to turn lived experience into purpose-driven change. Here on the podcast, we always come back to this idea that patterns shape who we are, but they don't have to define who we become. And what I love about your story is how you've chosen to create something completely new, not just for yourself, but for a whole community that's often overlooked. So thank you for that. I know your work will continue to have impact, and I just look forward to seeing what's next. So
thank you so much.
Yeah. So that's a wrap for this episode of Beyond the Pattern. Grace reminded us that sometimes the strongest leaders are those who had to build without a blueprint and still choose to reach back and make a path for others. The patterns we inherit don't have to define the future we build. And when we shift the pattern, we unlock what's possible. So thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Have a great week. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pattern. If this episode spoke to you, leave a review or send a message. I read every note, and you can reach out to me to get more tools and resources at bukolaoguntala.com.